Here.
Let me know that Commissioner Hecker and Hoffman vote to excuse tonight. Our first order of business is a motion to approve the minutes of the September 6, 2017 Public Works Committee meeting. I so move. Any comments from the committee? Commissioners? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Our first agenda item is PW1, PA Doc Master Agreement for Casting Adjustments 2017 to 2020. This is a motion to adopt resolution number 17-026, authorizing the Township of Abington to execute the 2017-2020 PA Doc Master Agreement for Casting Adjustments. We will authorize the Township Manager to sign the Master Agreement, project initiation form, and change order documents for the duration of the agreement, and I so move. Any comments from the committee? Fellow Commissioners? Staff? Audience? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. That concludes our formal agenda for the Public Works Committee. Any general comments on the Public Works? Hearing none. I'll entertain a motion to end the committee meeting. So moved. Motion accepted. Meeting is adjourned. Good try.
Ornament happy. Just like this one.
Call to order the Code Enforcement and Land Development Committee meeting for October 4th, 2017. And may I have a roll call, please? Here.
Here.
And I believe Commissioner DePlacido, and I think Commissioner Brodsky's on this committee now. I believe we appointed him last time. But both are excused. First, we'll start with a motion to approve the minutes of the September 6, 2017 Code Enforcement and Land Development Committee meeting, and I so move.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Any comments or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. And the Code Enforcement and Land Development Committee has no business at this time. So we will take general comments on Code Enforcement and Land Development. Your name and address for the record, please, and 3 minutes.
So, Commissioner Sanchez, we have, I assume that you have a copy of the public comments rules, and you are aware that when a question's asked, it's supposed to be answered, and if the answer can't be gotten immediately at the meeting, it will be gotten soon thereafter. Are you aware of that?
I believe it's may be answered if the answer is forthcoming, so I'm going to quibble with you on that. But why don't you say your comments? And
Well,
just keep it moving.
that's significant. If I've got it wrong, I'd like to know. Are you saying?
Got it wrong. I just corrected you. You got it wrong.
So what you're saying is that the public comment minutes, the rules actually say that the residents might have an answer if the city.
You said supposed to. I said they may
That-
get an
that's
answer
my-
if it's readily available or
So-
somebody's here that can answer it.
Yeah, so
That's different than supposed to. Supposed to means required to have an answer be given. That's not the case. You're wrong.
Okay. And so under what circumstances would you as chair think that a resident was not entitled to an answer?
Perhaps if one was not available at that moment in time because it required further research.
Okay, and the way our regulations are written, if further research is required, that research will be done and somebody will get back to the resident later. That's, I believe, how it's written. Am I correct?
I didn't bring them with me this evening.
Would you?
So, but
Well,
why don't you make the comments that you wish to make?
this is also a request to all of you to have the rules of the speaking rules, Robert's Rules of Order, et cetera, available so that comments that need to be looked up can be looked up. And I also would very much appreciate if you make a summary of those available to residents as they come in the door so they understand what regulates the goings-on at these meetings. In fact, you have been asked again and again and again to address the issue of a code department that is not enforcing codes. In myriad, horrendous situations where the lack of code enforcement has cost township residents thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars perhaps. It's cost them life-changing issues, it's quality of life issues, and that lack of code enforcement has had an impact on people again and again and again. And you've been told that, and there seems to be nobody in this township that will answer to that complaint.
Thank
Nobody.
you for your comments. Your 3
So,
minutes
well,
has expired.
it's actually not a comment. You were asked long ago to address that, and I'd like to know when you might address that. I would like to have that issue addressed.
Thank you for your comments.
Will the issue be addressed?
Expired.
It's a question, not a comment.
Can I have a motion to adjourn? If there's no other.
That's a question, not a comment, Mr. Sanchez, and if you can answer it now, you're supposed to answer it now.
Adjourned. Thank you.
I'd like to call the Public Safety Committee meeting of October 4th, 2017 to order. Can I have a roll call, please? Commissioner Schreiber? Here.
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 Commissioners DePlacido and Spiegelman are excused this evening. And now a motion to approve the minutes of the September 6th, 2017 Public Safety Committee meeting, and I so move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, all those who approve,
Aye.
and any changes? No.
Nope.
Okay, moving on. We have a police chief report, I believe, this evening?
That is correct.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
A couple things for you tonight, Commissioners. First of all, the press release was put out late this afternoon, and that had to do with skimmers, an arrest that was made. This was an investigation that had been ongoing for a couple of months, and there was one location, a Citizens Bank in Abington Township, Keith Road and Old York Road, that for 8 separate days during August, a skimming device was placed on that bank on the ATM about 5 o'clock in the morning and was removed each evening. There was about 170 some credit accounts or debit card accounts that were compromised as a result of that, and a substantial loss, although not to the cardholders, but to others as well, the bank mainly. In addition to that, we determined that this was part of a bigger investigation, and there was other banks that were involved. Another Citizens Bank in Willow Grove, a couple more banks in Upper Moreland Township, in Springfield Township, and in Cheltenham Township, along with our beneficial bank that's down on the fairway. About 3 o'clock this morning, one of our detectives traveled to New York City and met with a detective squad up there. Been working with them by phone for some period of time, and he went with an Upper Moreland detective as well. They served search warrants on a couple of apartments in Queens, and they recovered a substantial amount of cash, blank cards, gift cards, and equipment to do this. So it is a major, major arrest that should have a significant impact. But trust me when I tell you that this is not the only group that is doing this. This is really a phenomena that is just extremely, extremely serious. It's spreading very rapidly, and the technology is having trouble keeping up with it. But nevertheless, it's a good arrest, it's a big impact, and we'll go on from there. One of the things that we would encourage people to do is anytime you use an ATM, whether it's in a bank or if it's a standalone one, such as in a convenience store, take a look at that machine. If there's anything that doesn't look like it fits perfectly, if where you put your card in, grab a hold of that. If it moves, if it's just one of these that has been rigged up, it'll come right off in your hand, because that's the way they take them off and on. They're only hooked on there with double-sided tape. So you look for anything that doesn't seem to be quite right. They also have a hidden pinhole camera, which is how they capture your PIN numbers. And so if you can at all, put your hand over the keypad as you enter your PIN numbers in there. And those are a couple of ways that you can safeguard yourself. And we'll be putting out some crime prevention information on this in the very near future, as soon as we can get it all pulled together from this. I also wanted to just show you a device that we have recently deployed. In a SCAR report that you should have gotten today, you'll make note that there was an arrest that was made on somebody on a warrant, and it was done by this portable device. This is a portable device that the officers take out on the street. They can take somebody's fingerprint right there at the car stop. It transmits it electronically to the AFIS center, and it automatically identifies that individual. It also allows us to take a photo of the guy with the back end of it. It's an expensive piece of technology. We have 2 of them, and they were provided to us without charge to Abington Township Police by PCCD and JNet. So this is a tool I would have loved to have had when I was a young officer out there on the street, and it's almost space age stuff when you think about it. We're moving forward by leaps and bounds. And then finally, I want to report to you on the opioid epidemic. What we have so far this year in Abington Township is our police officers have deployed Narcan 10 times. That resulted in 7 saves. There was a number of other instances where second alarmers deployed Narcan, sometimes in concert with us, sometimes on their own. Unfortunately, there were 9 people who died from their overdoses this year to date, including a 40-year-old man who we reported to you died last Friday afternoon. So that's the downside of this. I also wanted to mention that on Friday morning, there is an opioid seminar being held at Abington Jefferson next door. I'll be presenting at that seminar, and I think it's going to give people a chance to hear what's going on regionally, in the county-wide, statewide, as well as finding out what we are doing to try to deal with some of the issues that we're experiencing out there. I also want to have Officer Freed, our traffic safety officer, has a couple things.
Evening, Commissioners. Just wanted to remind everybody that now that September's over, so is our traffic safety blitz for the month. So if anybody has a lawn sign out on their lawn, they need to take that down. They can store that in their garage or their attic, and back in June, they can put them back out. Also, the middle of this month, the week of October 15th, we will be working in conjunction with the Abington School District, and we're going to have officers assigned to bus routes that the school district provides, and we will be going around and stopping violators for passing school buses with their flashing lights. So I'm sure there'll be some more out on our social media and all that, but you can look for that the week of October 15th.
That's it.
I think we have a couple questions for you.
Yeah. Hi, Chief. With that fingerprint device that you showed, how do you get the motorist to give you his fingerprint?
It's very simple. If they don't have any identification, so we can't figure out who they are, most people will voluntarily, well, we need to do this, and they have no idea that it has the capabilities that it does, and they think we're just capturing their fingerprint, I guess, but it's actually transmitting it over a cell phone device, and it goes out to the AFIS center and identifies them.
So it's for individuals that claim, obviously, they don't have any ID on them, I guess, right? So you guys are trying to find out who they are.
Yes, that's basically where we use the thing.
All right.
You said you have 2 of them,
We have 2 of them.
so how do you decide where they're going
What we are doing is we're deploying them in the supervisors' cars, which we do with a lot of our specialized equipment because the supervisors are able to respond anywhere in the township. And on an officer stops somebody, they contact a supervisor and need that out here, bang, they run out there.
So they're not routinely going to be used?
I think it'll be being used more and more as we really get into it.
Any other questions? Commissioner Luker.
Chief, what's the cost of one of these?
They're over $4,000 each.
4,000.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you for your report. And we have from Second Alarmers, Rich Garrett. waving to us from the audience. Any comments tonight? No comments. Thank you very much. And so then we'll start with our agenda. PS1 is to consider proposed ordinance 2143, creating tax incentives for members of the Abington Township Fire Department and Montgomery County Second Alarmers EMS. A motion to advertise ordinance 2143 for adoption at the November 9th, 2017 regular public meeting, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we have a report?
We do.
Commissioner Shriver, if I could, though, the motion is going to need to be amended. The statute enabling this program requires a minimum of 30 days of advertising. We will be meeting on, you will be making your motion to advertise next Thursday, the 12th. We meet again on December 14th, which is, you wouldn't have enough time, November, you wouldn't have enough time for the November meeting, so it will have to be done on at our December 14th meeting.
Shall we make that amendment before we discuss?
You can, it would probably be appropriate, yes.
Okay, so the motion is to advertise 2143 for adoption at December 12th?
December 14th.
At the December 14th regular public meeting, and I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded, and now we will have,
We have with us this evening Fire Marshal Clark, Assistant Fire Marshal Rohr, and Fire Administrator Schramm. They are going to go through things, but before we recognize these fine gentlemen, I want to mention that we've had a number of meetings, and the one person who isn't here who was excused, Ms. Lisa Shawley, should be recognized for the incredible work she did with running all of these numbers in the spreadsheets. She did a fantastic job, and just because she couldn't be here this evening and was excused, I didn't want her to not be recognized, because I think they'll all admit that she did a lot of good work.
Who did you say?
Lisa Shelley, yeah.
Wouldn't you agree, Ken?
whenever you're ready.
Yes, absolutely. Good evening, Commissioners. We've been working on this probably for 2 months now. Based on some information guidelines that we received, we ran the numbers like the manager indicated with the help of Lisa Shawley. And we figure that the approximate cost in I guess, lost revenue would be approximately $50,000, maybe a little south of 50,000 or a wee bit north, but we're pretty comfortable with the number of $50,000. We've checked with the second alarmers, and they provided us with a list of volunteers that they have, and they gave us a list of, I think it was either 5 or 6, and out of that we knocked 2 or 3 off, because even though it appeared to be an Abington Township address for that particular volunteer, it was actually somebody living in Lower Moreland or in Upper Moreland. So there's really about 2 to 3 at the most that that would potentially qualify. When we ran the numbers for the firefighters, we feel that we're pretty confident in saying that if the proposed ordinance passes, as I believe it's going to be written, or it is written, it will result in about a $200 savings as an incentive to the firefighters. The average firefighter that's paying EIT will get about $100 reduction in his EIT, his or her EIT tax, and property tax would be about the same, about $100. Do you guys have anything else to add to that?
John, just for the commissioner's edification, I know you have those numbers. just a breakdown between EIT and property tax. It is just south of 50,000, but there's a breakdown. One is 35,000, one is 10,000. I know you have those. You may just want to share them.
Yeah, that's correct. For the earned income tax, there were 132 qualifying members. And through Lisa's research with Berkheimer, it would be a $35,052 tax credit to those members. The property tax, there were 177 eligible members. The allowed, with the 20% allowable percentage, came to $10,850 of tax credit that would go out. And like Ken said, that was $91 per firefighter. So it's, yeah. We're but right now at the $45,850 mark. That is the record stand today, so. And that is including the 3 from Second Alarmers.
And just so you,
Could,
Can we wait on questions?
I know, I just thought maybe they could explain, because people out here don't know what they're,
What about the, okay.
yeah.
I wasn't sure if they were done yet.
Okay.
I wanted to mention the purpose of the program, which is, of course, to attract new volunteers, to retain the volunteers that we have, and perhaps get the volunteers that we have to do a little more to reach the threshold we've set for participation. So it's a tax rebate incentive program to sustain the volunteer system, is what it comes down to.
Is there anything else you want to add from your report? Because I think a lot of people probably have questions. but-
there is one other thing I'd like the commissioners to be aware of, is Mr. Barron and I met again today, so we're talking about tax credits, and we are aware of this number, so that if you do pass this ordinance, there will be an adjustment down in the budget, so it's already built into fiscal year 2018 budget that you'll be receiving on the 18th.
Thank you for adding that. Anything else from any of you?
I think at this point, if anybody has any questions, that probably would speed this up a little bit.
Okay. So I'll start because I have some questions, and then I'll turn it over to the other commissioners on the committee, and then commissioners in general, and the public. So it's mostly very clear, I thought. I just had a couple quick questions. On the eligibility period, this is just a curiosity thing. Why does the 2017 year start January 20th and the other ones start January 1st?
It's the way the statute is written.
Okay, I just was curious on that one.
You can ask the legislature. That's the way they did it.
I have a couple other questions. I assumed it might have been something like that, but I wasn't really sure. Okay, in the official tax when they're registering, it goes from I'm not sure who I'm looking at here. Okay. It goes from the fire chiefs to our administration. And there's a number of things on here, and I think it also says it goes to the Board of Commissioners. And I believe one of the things that might have to be included is people's social security numbers. So I'm wondering how we cannot have all that information go out to a whole group of people.
I think that's a question for the other table.
Yeah, I think it,
There's almost no way.
Let's,
Again, required by statute.
Yeah.
To have the social security
Yeah.
number, and
Yeah.
it has to go to all these
Yeah,
people.
very little, I shouldn't say very little, almost nothing in this ordinance is beyond what is required by law. This is the way it's been written, and this is what we've put together. Much of what we've done since this was first introduced in working with Rich, and as Rich has been working with the Fire Marshal's office, is getting sample drafts of this from various organizations, but everything defaults back to what the statute is requiring you to have. Obviously, they're trying to prevent, Social Security numbers is one way of being able to track somebody, so somebody there can't be anything that's going on with their taxes, so that's why it's required and that's why it's in there.
But does that have to go, like, say, for example, to the full board, every single person?
No, I don't think that's the way that's
no, I think it just has to
intended.
go to
Yeah.
the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
So it goes from the fire
It can go
chief
from
is
here
going
to the Commonwealth, and we don't have to
go
give that
through all those
incorrect.
chiefs, because it has a list of all these people. It has-
Well, I think what it's saying is it has to go to all these people, but the relevant information in there doesn't need to be, all of that does not need to be disclosed.
exactly
Right,
right.
right. But by the time it makes it to the Commonwealth, it has to have Social Security.
Which I understand.
Right.
Yeah, and the tax
Right.
authorities, I understand that, but I just didn't know that we all need to know every single 177 people's social security numbers for all of us.
No,
It seemed to make sense to me.
And Commissioner,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, reading through this and talking with some of the other municipalities who are doing this, the individual member would complete an application requesting that credit. Their personal information would be on that form only. The fire chief will certify a list of the active members. And the fire chief would sign that member's application. You will see the complete list of authorized members. The forms with the personal identification will go to the tax collectors.
So
So,
only the fire chief and the tax collector will
correct. Only the people that already have access to that information will have that. Okay.
Thank you for that. And my one other question, which I think we've talked about before, has to do with married couples. So if there's two people in the same household, do they both get both the EIT, and is the property tax just a one-time thing on that property, I would imagine?
It's a one-time thing for the property, so just one would get that, yes.
So if it's a joint form, obviously, they would just get the property tax.
They would get one property tax, but both would be eligible for EIT if they both worked in the township.
That's into my questions. Committee members, any questions?
Just, I agree with this. I think it's a great idea, and thank you for bringing this to the board, and thank you for doing all the hard work to get that done. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to voting yes for that. Thank you.
Commissioner Myers.
Thank you. Recruitment and retention has been a subject for a long time that I know that you all have been working on, and this really sounds like it's something that would help with that. How, have you made plans, assuming this gets passed, and I'm pretty sure it will, have you made plans on how to get this information out? So, I mean, obviously, with your retention, you're getting it out to people that you already have, but for your recruitment, it's getting it out to people that are not members of the fire department yet. So, will you have a plan somehow to get this information out?
Yes, as you know, we have many publications, and we have a very active website. We have a very active Facebook page. So material like this, we have the channels already set up to get information out.
Good.
Thank you, Commissioner Schreiber. Commissioner DePlacido, Jimmy DePlacido, asked me to read his support for this, which of course I agree with. In his own words, I fully support the tax exemption motion for our Abington Township Fire Department. Knowing that my neighbors and friends are now eligible for this makes me extremely happy, let alone grateful for all that Chief Sean of McKinley and his crew do for our community. It's long overdue and extremely well-deserved. And again, those are Jimmy's words, and I echo that and expand it to the entire ATFD, so thank you.
Thank you. I do want to mention that also Commissioner Spiegelman had expressed that he's in favor of this. He's not here this evening. You have your one.
I have my one finger up. Thank you.
finger up.
Thank you, Commissioner Schreiber. Well, first I wanted to thank Commissioner Schreiber because I know it was one of, you brought up the initial idea and brought it to the board for development, and the fire marshal's office for working on it. So I wanted to thank you for bringing that up. So my first question is, we talked about getting a fiscal impact. I know the fire marshal's office put together those numbers. Are those numbers, can they be given to the board and made available for the public to be able to see?
Yes, we have them and we can do that.
What's that?
We have them and we can do
So we
that.
can make that available before the board meeting next Thursday?
Yes.
So I had a couple questions on the ordinance on 152-85 qualifying volunteers. I don't know if this may have already been covered by Commissioner Shriver's question, but it talked under B, joint tax return. Can somebody clarify exactly what that paragraph is stating?
5.2B, limitations.
Of the joint tax.
It's again, it is somewhat covered by Commissioner Schreiber's question, but it does apply only to the township portion of the EIT, not to the school district portion.
And is that under the state statute, or could the school district forgive that also, or no?
I do not believe that the legislation permits a school district to abate these taxes.
Okay.
It's done for us. Municipalities are permitted to do it. We haven't taken a look at that, but I don't think the school district can do it also.
Okay. Under 152-88, real property tax credit, I'm assuming, and I think it states that, but the person needs to own the property, can't rent the property, and the name of the property has to be in their name in some way, shape, or form, but not like a trust or anything like that.
Qualified real property says a residential real property owned and occupied as the domicile of an active volunteer. So it can't be a rental property, either the volunteer renting it out to someone else or the volunteer living in a rental property. It has to be owned and occupied as the domicile of an active volunteer.
And how about if it's owned by a parent? It would have to,
Owned and occupied as a residential real property owned and occupied as the domicile of an active volunteer. So if a volunteer was living in his or her parents' home, it would not be a qualified property.
okay. And then I had a question on the 20% for the property tax. I'm assuming, well, let me step back a second. Can a volunteer firefighter or somebody from the second alarmers get both credits? Is that my understanding? It's not an either or.
It's an and/or, not an either/or.
So they can get both. Yep. The 20% on the property tax, is there a reason there's no cap on that like there is on the EIT tax?
It was provided for.
I don't think it was provided for in the legislation.
So we can't put a cap on, is what you're saying? The EIT tax has a $1,000 cap, property tax does not.
I think I know the reason for that. The EIT, there's municipalities that have enacted similar legislation, and they totally removed EIT for the burden of the active firefighter. So EIT is not stuck at 20%. If you chose to do so, you could eliminate 100% of EIT up to $1,000, I believe.
No, well, the EIT tax is a tax credit up to 20%, up to $1,000. So they can't have all their taxes.
I guess
They have two limits, the 20% and the $1,000.
I was just asking Mr. Clark, my understanding is that there's no prohibition against the commissioners putting a cap on.
So
20% for property.
I think our millage is what, around 29?
You can
29 mills for township
EIT.
taxes, is it?
Well, 30.
Roughly?
You can go up to 30, and we're at, what, 4.2, so.
What's that?
You can go up to 30. Your ceiling is 30. We're at 4.
No, for our property tax. Right now, the property tax millage,
Is I should know it off the top of my head, I was looking at it today, 4.2, and the ceiling is 30.
okay. I guess the only concern, and this is much down the line because there's been no talk about it, is if the county reassesses and changes their assessment values, how that affects, because right now most people's properties, their assessed value is only about 54% of their real value, or roughly around 54%. If the county ever went through and reassessed and brought that back up to 100%, how that affects the property taxes when you're at 20%.
Here's what will happen. If the county would do a countywide reassessment, the first year after the property taxes, there's a limit on how high you can make it. So just for simplicity's sake, if it's 25% market to value and your taxes are 12 mils, that first year it would be 3 or 4 mils. And you can only keep it at that. The advantage to a reassessment is really to those municipalities that are really at the ceiling. Because if you're at the ceiling at 30, for example,
Right.
and you get it reassessed, and you can go down to to 10 or 8,
Gotcha.
you now have the ability to go back up.
Okay.
So in our case, because we're so low, it would be a minimal impact.
And then my last question is, the criteria for determining point systems, is that, I didn't see that in the ordinance?
No,
Is
you don't. That
that's
was going to
something
be
that
the
comes
one
later?
point that I,
What's that?
that was going to be the one point that I made when she got to staff. The one thing, detail that you still need is the resolution. So when you adopt the ordinance, if and when you adopt the ordinance, the next thing you would do is adopt a resolution which sets these guidelines. Ms. Gallagher has made it perfectly clear that there are very specific standards
Right.
to meet the fire commissioners.
So that's the second step.
That's the second
This is
step.
the second
We are going to work through those details for reasons that Ken, and I talked about as recent as 2 days ago, is the LOSA criteria may not work for what the commissioner wants. So there are some details we have to work through. We're very confident we could do that. John already has some ideas if he wants to talk about them now. But we will work through all of those details and have a resolution for you at the December meeting that you can adopt immediately after this ordinance, which will,
And will the fire chiefs be involved in that
of course,
this conversation? Okay.
they've been involved at all steps.
Can I just piggyback on that? So if we do it at the December meeting, this will be voted on in time, I'm assuming it's gonna pass, both the ordinance and the resolution, that people can get it for this fiscal year.
Well,
I mean,
beginning
this
2018,
calendar
correct.
year. Yeah, for the 2017 taxes.
Yes.
The resolution does not need to be advertised ahead of time, so you'll be able to, you'll get copies of the resolution ahead of time, and you can consider the resolution at the same time you're considering the ordinance.
And the resolution, the point system is going to be the same for all the firehouses and, yeah.
Well, wait, so then I have a question on that. If this is going to affect 2017 taxes, that means they have to apply, and somebody has to be able to verify that the criteria set in the resolution was tracked during the 2017 year.
We have to transmit it to the taxing authorities so that when they prepare their returns, they have the information. Is that not correct?
Well, but I get that, but I'm just trying to figure out the timeline here.
There already is, correct me if I'm wrong, there already is a tracking system, but you're just trying to tweak that. So firehouses already, for their insurance purposes, have some kind of eligibility criteria already in place.
I know John has the answer to
Tracking
this.
would- Yeah.
Why don't you answer it?
Go ahead.
If you recall the reports that you receive on a monthly basis from the fire department, it gives you all kinds of information. It tracks the number of firefighters that were on fires, it tracks the hours of training, it tracks the hours of administrative work, it tracks the hours of firefighting. So we have data that, with the push of a button, we can provide a list of qualifying firefighters for the tax office. It's that simple.
So it would be it would be available for that January.
Okay.
Just a comment. Just the impact of this compared to the, on the budget, compared to the impact if we had to pay firefighters. If anybody ever thought about what that impact would have on this budget, this is, I think it's really a good thing.
Any other commissioner comments? Staff, audience?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. So I feel like this is a little sample of how the IRS code got the way it is. So in essence, I first of all want to applaud all of our volunteers. And I do understand Commissioner Gillespie's comment that the cost of having a paid fire department is pretty outrageous. But what we're doing in this particular manner is getting around something which we're saying firefighters can't be paid, and then we're finding a way to pay them because that's the incentive that we need in order to get them. So rather than fighting for an open plan where if you need to pay firefighters to incentivize them, you fight for legislation, the same legislation that allowed this, You fight for legislation that says up to a certain very minimal amount, firefighters may be reimbursed to allow for recruitment, and exactly what you're saying this will do. This will entice them to be recruited because there is a financial incentive. But the financial incentive isn't the same for everybody. So one guy owns a house, one guy doesn't own a house, he gets a different amount. One guy makes a certain amount on his income tax, another guy makes another amount. It's not the same. So you've already set up a disparity in how they will be reimbursed. You've already set up something that is so complicated, you all can't even understand most of it, and it would come down to one or two people understanding it and virtually no oversight over it. And in the actual budget, where we go to see what the fire budget is, this is listed as something that will not be intelligible or easy to oversee by the public. So what you've done is show us a little microcosm of how our IRS system got the way it is, a complete mess. I would encourage you, yes, to reimburse these fine people because they have costs just to be able to volunteer for us. But I would encourage you to go to Harrisburg and on the federal level, join forces and work towards saying a minimal amount would still allow these people to be called volunteers if we're reimbursing expenses and so on, and not do it this way. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from the audience?
I don't, no idea.
Anybody else? So, thank you for working on this, everybody. It's very clear. I think you can understand it very well. And it's a great idea, in my opinion, to work on it. So thank you for that. And now we'll have a vote. As I said before, the two missing people from our committee, although they can't vote since they're not here, but they are both in favor. And so a vote from the committee members that are here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on. PS2 is a motion to authorize township officials to accept a grant award from the Bureau of Highway Safety and Traffic Engineering in the amount of $55,000 with the township's matching portion approximately $480, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments on that from commissioners, staff, audience? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Vote can happen.
So sobriety checkpoint, right?
Yes, we are on the sobriety check.
Okay, so again, you are interrupting. In America, we have the right to not have police interruption and to be stopped for no reason. And so this allows the police to stop. I have only one statistic. I'm sure the other statistics are very similar. In the one statistic that I have, 1,200 people were stopped and they found 12 violations, not all DUIs or whatever. So the other 1,100 and some people were stopped for no reason. And as you know, there are grave consequences for some people, because we do have people that, you know, don't know the law and they get a little uppity that somebody's stopping them for no reason, and then the cop gets uppity back, and then pretty soon there's an altercation, and that person can end up in jail from something that he said or didn't do right. So that's one of the reasons that we have that law. We have that law to protect citizens from unwarranted and unreasonable searches, seizures, and so on. And yes, I do know that it's been passed down and considered legal, but we're asking you to fight for our rights, and our rights include that if we're not doing something wrong, we shouldn't have to be stopped. So I'm asking you to please consider standing up for the residents of this township that you represent. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
It passes 2-1.
PS3 is a motion to adopt ordinance number 2144, amending chapter 156, vehicles and traffic, Article 2, traffic regulations, section 14, stop intersections, Article 3, parking regulations, section 25, parking prohibited at all times, no parking between signs, no parking here to corner, parking prohibited except certain hours, no stopping or standing, and section 27, time limited. Ordinance number 2144 will establish the following: stop signs on Davidson Road at London Road, northbound and southbound. Stop sign on Hemlock Circle, northbound at Canterbury Road, east intersection. Stop sign on Hemlock Circle, northbound at Canterbury Road, west intersection. Stop signs on Mill Road at Morden Road, both directions. Three-way stop sign, Sewell Lane at Cherry Lane. No parking on the south side of Windsor Avenue from North Hills Avenue at 79 feet east of North Hills Avenue. Ordinance number 2144 has been attached for us and will repeal the following: Old York Road, old section at Temple, Beth Am, no parking on Tuesdays 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. and on Sunday from 10 a.m. to noon. I so move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments?
Yeah, I, for the traffic safety, I guess, the Mill Road, you're gonna put a stop sign coming down the hill right at Morden, both ways? Yes. Is there a lot of accidents at that location?
There's a substantial amount here, because of the site distance.
You just wonder about,
Excuse me. Do you need to be on a microphone to answer this question?
I just thought of the snow, like if going up, it's kind of an incline there. Sometimes when you're going up Mill Road, you kind of got to, get a little ahead of steam if there's snow or anything.
Right, that shouldn't be too much of a problem here because you have enough distance. The problem is there, but the site distance coming off of Mordon Road, it's difficult, so we need to put the all-way stop sign in there.
Yeah, it's a tight intersection. Okay, thanks.
Any comments from other commissioners, staff, audience?
So I did miss the answer when you weren't at the mic. If maybe Officer Freed could answer again about the reason for putting that there. What were the statistics on Mill Road? Was it accident statistics or number of cars or what?
Yes, there's been a number of accidents there. I don't know the numbers right off the top of my head, but it meets the requirement as far as establishing an all-way stop there. And again, the reason being is that the site distance is difficult coming off of Mordon Road on the Mill Road there because of some of the trees and foliage that's been planted, especially by one house on the corner there. It's difficult to see.
Commissioner Schreiber. Well, I have a comment. So I discussed this with Officer Freed. I've been driving through that area quite often lately, and the site distances, especially when you come down Morden, looking, I guess, northbound or westbound on Mill Road, there's a natural embankment that you can't see past, and you basically a third of your car would be in the westbound or northbound lanes of Mill Road before you can actually see the cars coming up from the train station. And likewise, on the left-hand side, as Officer Freed had mentioned, there are trees planted in the neighbor's property, which is their house is awfully close to the house, to the street, to Morden, and it is an accident waiting to happen. I mean, you cannot stop at the current stop sign on Morden Road and see any cars either left or right without creeping into the oncoming traffic coming down the hill on Mill Road. So that's why I had requested the analysis, and that's why the stop signs are on here.
So I just came down there tonight, and pretty much every single time you guys see me, I come down there, and probably every single time I go out, I come down there. So I know that intersection pretty well. So my concern is 90% of the time that I am coming there, I have absolutely no problem seeing. And I think you do have to stop at the stop sign, and if you're looking right and left when you're stopped at the stop sign, but you just creep up, a couple inches and you can see. So anybody who goes before they can see, what's coming right and left has gone too soon. We're not trained when we drive to stop at the stop sign and then go before you can see anything. So that would indicate perhaps that the stop sign's in the wrong place and that the visibility, because when there is no problem staying out of the traffic and seeing both ways at that intersection.
We went through this before again and again and again.
Excuse me, I was speaking,
The
Commissioner.
stop sign
Commissioner
cannot
Klein,
be
I
moved
was.
up.
Commissioner
and-
Klein, I was speaking. Can you let me finish, please? And then you can make your comments? Okay? So there is absolutely no, I've been driving that. I have lived in this township since 1981. Okay, well, actually since 1976. Okay? And in this house since 1981. And I have been driving that road since 1981, all the time. And it is not a problem seeing right or left at the bottom of the hill. What is a problem is at rush hour, it's now getting very busy and it's difficult to get out. But there is not a problem seeing either right or left, and the stuff coming over the hill is in the opposite lane. You can't be in that lane.
And you're past your 3 minutes, so thank you.
Well, my 3 minutes were taken up here
You
in...
really weren't. I let you have extra time. You really are past your time.
Yes, but my intent of speaking was diverted by the interruptions that came. This is the fairness in speaking that I'm looking for, Commissioner Schreiber.
I know, and you have gone way past your time, and I've been
Okay.
very lax about it, so you can thank me for
Okay,
that.
well, would you like to hear the rest of the intersection? Because there's not a problem, but there is a problem at rush hour, and that's not the right thing. 90% of the time when I drive that road, there's 1 or 2 cars at the same time
Thank you. I understand.
going any which direction.
We also have somebody here that also lives in that area, and somebody who is an expert in here who are also sharing their opinions. So thank you for your comments.
Okay, and I'd like to see the statistics that you took on that. Thank you.
We're not required to take statistics on a stop sign installation.
Well, I think this is, Al and I have talked about this intersection again and again and again. And he has, at first, we had the lane lines drawn coming from eastbound Mill Road onto Morden so that we could direct traffic, so there wasn't the conflict of cars coming off of Morden into Mill Road, so that they stayed in their lanes. That maybe helped a little bit. The actual location of the stop sign coming down from Morden Road is in the location that it needs to be because of the curve and at what point the curb starts to curve into Mill Road. There's no other place to put the stop sign, and the plain fact of the matter is the sight distances meet the requirements as as Officer Freed has gone out there, and regardless of what the speaker says, there's a need there, and I've gotten complaints. Whether she's complained or not about that specific thing, it would be a first. But again and again and again, I've gotten complaints.
Would you be kind enough, Commissioner Schreiber, just to let me describe that there is another problem there
Can you
that...
please sit down?
There is another problem that needs to be addressed. Well, would you please step down as Safety Commissioner if you won't listen to things about safety? Okay.
Actually, I will not.
Then,
We are discussing a particular sign right now, and you have made your comments on that sign, and you've been given more than 3 minutes to do that. Please sit down. Thank you.
And please step down.
Do you have anything that you would like to add to this conversation?
I think we've pretty much discussed the situation there. As Commissioner Klein said, we've looked at that intersection numerous times. The stop sign at that intersection on Mordon Road does sit back from the intersection due to the topography of the land there. It requires you not only to stop at the stop sign, but you have to actually move up in order to see both ways for the traffic on Mill Road itself. And that has caused some conflicts because people pull out too far and cars have hit them because of that. So based on the sight distance measurements we took there, we installed we proposed to install the all-way stop sign.
I'll make it real quick. Yes. I would say Officer Freed does not take his job lightly. and I appreciate it. A lot of times he tells me no on areas in my ward. So if he says this is qualified, I have to believe the expert, Officer Freed. So thank you, Al. And I will vote yes.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And I'm sure if there's other issues in that intersection or any other intersection, whoever may have them, to send them to their commissioner, and they will get to you as they
Yep.
always do. You get probably more emails from us than you probably want. Okay, so we are going to vote on this PS3. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. PS4 is a motion directing the police department to donate to Bikes for Tykes program, care of Sussman Automotive, all unclaimed bicycles and bicycle parts which have been confiscated and are being held by the department, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments from commissioners?
This is, I'll say something real quick. This is a great program. I do feel if someone has lost their bike, they know to contact the police department to register a lost bike, and that's how you find your bike. If you have not claimed it, this is a great program and heading in the right direction. I really appreciate bringing this program to us. Thank you.
And I also do want to point out that the list has been made available of the bikes, and the commissioners have that in the books, the ones that were picked up from 2016 or 17. So we have those bikes listed. Any other comments from commissioners?
I do. I would just like to add that these bikes, I think, have been sitting around for a long time, and in most cases are in really bad condition, not usable condition. And the employees at Sussman volunteer to fix these bikes and repaint them and make them look like new. So they're really recycling this material and giving it to children that otherwise may not be able to have a bike.
Yeah, we've approved this again and again and again, and I agree with Steve that this is a great program, so.
Any other comments? Staff, audience?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. And Commissioner Schreiber, could you use your microphone a little closer, please? I can't hear half of what you're saying
Unfortunately,
tonight.
It doesn't go any closer to me.
It doesn't go
and
any
I'm
closer?
little,
Okay.
so I don't
All
know what
right.
to do about that.
We need a longer one for you. So I heard you say, but it trailed off, and so I didn't hear where. You said that the bikes were listed somewhere. Where were they listed?
We have them right here, and I guess they're along with the agenda.
I apologize, what was the question?
Where the bikes were listed. So is this the only place that they're listed in the meeting documents of this meeting when you drill down?
They were listed online, where the agenda's listed.
Yeah, the agenda's online.
So in the agenda, if you knew that you lost a bike and you should go to the agendas and drill down on this particular agenda.
The police have this information, so if
Trying to
you lost
understand
your
your
bike, you reported it to the police would be able to.
Okay,
tell you what the bike is.
so I think you're very well aware, because you've heard me say this year in and year out, that we would like to have it advertised that the police have lost bikes and they are about to dispose of them for a very good cause. I'm not upset with the program. Okay, what I'm upset with is was Chief Kelly actually made the comment that everybody who lost a bike knew to go to the police. Well, clearly they don't, or there is not you wouldn't have those bikes, and that's the problem. So you might want to think that those bikes were stolen from somewhere else, then the police department should be sharing information. So clearly, people who own those bikes are not reporting them to the police. And I would hope the police are comparing serial numbers with other police departments. So what I'm asking is something so simple. It's hard to believe for 12 years we can't get this. So simple. Ask the commissioners, please, to use whatever mailing lists you have to mail out the kinds of bikes that you have and that they've been lost, and that the people could have to prove some sense that it was theirs, either a receipt or a picture of them on the bike, or vouched for by people who know that they lost their bike. And you might also learn why they didn't report it, okay? There might be something in there. So please share those lists out before you approve giving the bikes away.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Not even on the committee, and I voted.
Motion carries. And that concludes our agenda this evening. Any other last comments about public safety this evening?
Commissioner, one quickly, just so everyone, and I believe all the commissioners understand this, but for those who are in the public who may not, in the agenda item that Ms. Lehman referred to that goes online, there is a complete list of everything that is in front of you this evening so that the public understand that you are aware of every item. There's a detailed memorandum from September 20th from Mr. Santens to Chief Livingood, just so everyone, just to clarify that it is there and it is public.
Thank you very much.
Pardon me? Correct.
And this goes out Friday before the Wednesday meeting.
Correct.
So,
Do it again and again and again.
Right, you comment? Are you about to make
So Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. So that somehow you're missing the point, is that, you know, we have 56,000 residents in this township, and 99.9% of them do not open the agendas and drill down, and you can see how many of them are here, okay? So we've asked, could you please get this list out to the people using your emails and your contacts, or at the very least say if you lost a bike, please check with the police. They have a bunch of them they're about to dispose of. That's something that should come out in commissioners' letters. And one or two commissioners did do it after I asked once before, and then they quit doing it. Okay, so that's what the point is. In terms of the Morden and Mill Road, let me tell you, and I am extremely distressed to have a public safety officer that would quiet somebody rather than wanting to know what the problem from a resident who drives that road all the time is. The problem...
That is incorrect. I did say that if you or any other citizen has any problems with any streets, they can contact their commissioner and they can contact Officer Freed with those comments.
I have already
But
contacted...
We were talking about a particular agenda item, and so that was, you were taking us off onto a different topic. Now, if you would like to, now for your final comment, you have 3 minutes, you can talk about that.
You were talking about the Mill Road intersection and putting stop signs. I didn't take you into any different topic. That was the Mill Road intersection with Morden Road that I was talking about.
The words you said, there's another issue on there.
On that road, another issue on that road that Commissioner Klein is mentioning, the road goes down, he's saying at the bottom of the hill you can't see in order to pull out. With cars coming over the hill, they don't come out over the hill in that lane. There's only one, you can't come from the other way and pull left, okay? The cars that come over the hill are not in your lane. I've done that since 1981 almost every day. Okay, so I know that intersection. Where the problem in that intersection is when you're coming over that hill and down to Mill Road at the bottom. When you go to turn left, most people cut that corner and they can't see the car coming down. Well, you can see it if you go wide, but if you cut that corner short, you can cause an accident. I have asked the police to put a triangle there or a barricade of some sort there, and was denied and denied and denied. Now what they're going to do is put a stop sign here and a stop sign there on Morden Road. It's not going to solve that problem, okay? The person who stopped over here and then turns still can cut that corner. So you're not solving the problem. What you're doing is taking traffic that 90% of the time could just keep moving, and there's very little traffic coming down except at rush hour, okay? And you're making them stop every time. That's not the correct thing to do. Having a blinking light 90% of the time and at rush hour having a stoplight, that might be an improvement. So I would like to talk to somebody before they make that improvement. I think I know that intersection better than Commissioner Klein.
Do we have any other comments?
Motion to
Yeah.
adjourn.
Oh, I did have comment. I was going to say on the bicycles, I think we should print flyers and put them in the door. Everybody, so everybody gets the message throughout the township.
Thank you for your comment.
And the meeting is adjourned.
This is the scheduled meeting of the Public Affairs Committee, and I am chairing for Commissioner Spiegelman, who is at back-to-school night. So with that, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Bowman,
Here.
Spiegelman, Schreiber. Here. Rothman, Kalinowski.
Here.
And initially, we'll have a motion to approve the minutes of the September 6th, 2017 Public Affairs Committee meeting, and I so move.
Second.
Any changes or additions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And Public Affairs has just one item on our agenda tonight. That's PA1. This is Mr. Franz Griette field naming request for Roslyn Park Soccer Field. Mr. Franz Griette field naming request for Roslyn Park Soccer Field. It speaks for itself. This is a request that's been put forward to honor Mr. Griette for his longtime service to the Boys Club and to various soccer teams affiliated with the Boys Club. And I think Mark is going to make Mr. Pennicow will make a brief statement about that. Mark.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. First, this is the first time in 28 years I've been in front of you as a resident and not as an employee. Commissioner Bowman's correct. This is the first application I believe you've seen under the new naming policy that we have. We started this process about 1.5 years ago with Doug Wendell, Mike Lefevre, and Commissioner Luker. And as it's morphed to where it is today, it's been going through Andy Olds, our new Parks Director, and Commissioner Bowman since it's in his ward. There's criteria underneath the naming rights policy that the board put forward. And the first of those is contributions the individuals made to the community. I attached a brief 3-page bio that outlines the time and commitment that Mr. Griette has compiled since 1970. Although it covers roughly the 40 years of service he put in with Roslyn Boys and Girls Club and the affiliate soccer clubs, I don't think it takes into account the number of hours the man spent cutting the field, lining the field, purchasing paint, purchasing nets, purchasing equipment, and everything that's going on with that through Roslyn Park, Roslyn School when we used to play soccer there, and over the last, well, not within the last 5 years, but for the first 3 or 4 years that we played soccer up at Crestmont Park. It's unique that even with his passing 5 years ago at this point, one of the nets he purchased is still in play down at Roslyn Park, and his beloved Roslyn women's soccer team is still using his corner flags weekly. I hope that this request and the petition that was attached to it, the board gets an understanding of the number of people this man has actually touched. If you came up at all either playing soccer or coaching soccer in any way, shape, or form in the Roslyn area, this guy was an absolute fixture at our playing fields. The second criteria I think you need to take a look at in the naming rights is the community support. His children put the petition together for me. In a matter of 3 days, accumulated just over 800 signatures, and we kind of cut it off there so we didn't burden the board with 1,000+ signatures. As I went through the list of signatures on the petition, the number of current and past Roslyn residents, players, coaches, and even people that Franz coached against and played against are on that list for you. The financial impact that this request would have to the Board of Commissioners is absolutely zero. What we're looking for is the standard parks naming plaque that you see throughout the township. There's an existing Abington Township Parks and Recreation sign and a placard for Roslyn Park at the dead end of Hammond Place. We would add an additional 8-inch high by 4 foot wide wooden plaque to that, that would read in the same color scheme, Franz Griette Memorial Soccer Field. If you're familiar with Roslyn Park, the soccer field is one of many things that goes on down there. It overlaps the Michelob Field, which you guys named probably 10 years ago at this point. It overlaps the Legion baseball field and also the softball field. It's used for soccer practices every night of the week by our youth program up through AC United's U18s on up. The equipment Franz donated to the club is in use by both Roslyn soccer clubs, AC United soccer clubs, and also Hunter soccer clubs up at Crestmont Park. The policy itself requires that an individual be deceased for at least a period of 3 years. Unfortunately, for those of us that know Franz, he passed on November 30th, 2012. To the best of my knowledge, this request meets every one of the criteria in this naming rights policy that was put together by the board and approved. The easy part of this is standing up here and tell you what he did and who he coached and what awards he's won and what he's done. But there's a couple words I hope you guys will take away from this tonight. They respect. I truly respected this man. He was an absolute treat to watch coach a soccer game. To learn a little bit about soccer for him was immensely important to me coming up, for no other reason than I played the other football, the one with the helmet and the goofy shaped ball.
Did you use a helmet?
The man was an absolute gentleman. To watch him interact with officials, opposing coaches or players was a treat. If there was a bad call, you'd get a goofy little smirk, a head nod. Occasionally, he'd utter the words, "You owe me one," and he would move on. There was no ranting, raving, kicking at dirt, throwing at clipboards or whistles. He was a treat. There's not many people in this world, I think I'd use the word love with. A couple of selected family members, not all of them. A few friends. This man I honestly and truly loved. He was such a treat. He was kind of like a Howard Eskin. Never had a bad day in his life, always had a smile on his face, and he was always willing to do whatever you needed him to do. I hope you'll take this request seriously. I honestly and truly hope that it's approved. As I said, I think we've hit all the target points that you had laid out in the naming rights policy, and if you have any questions, I can answer them. If not, 3 of Franz's children are here tonight, in addition to several of his past players. So we'll open it up to whatever questions you have, and thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for your usual thorough and impressive job. And I certainly support this motion in honor of Mr. Griette. Any other comments from committee members?
No.
Other commissioners who are present? Yes, Ben.
Well, again, very compelling case, Mr. Penical. And I did want to say I particularly enjoyed in the materials, I think you said the children put it together, but the last part, the secret to Franz's success, very telling in those comments that, you know, what the character of the person
He was a
we were
treat.
dealing with. So,
He
yes,
truly
thank
was.
you.
One thing that's not in any of that, Franz was also an employee of Abington Township and retired from here. He was a longtime engineer at our wastewater treatment facility underneath Bob Lieber and Bob's the predecessor to Bob. So in addition to 42 years of trudging around Roslyn Park, rain or shine, lining fields and coaching fields, he spent a great deal of his time over on Fitzwater Town Road at our lovely facility. So, again, I'll answer any questions you have.
Very good.
Thank you, Mark.
Welcome.
And any other community input on this motion? Who would like to address the committee? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. That's the only item of business on the public affairs list, so we'll invite comments, general public affairs comments at this time.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. Commissioner Bowman, I'll ask you the same question that I asked earlier. Are you familiar with the speaking rules?
Yes, I am generally familiar with the speaking rules.
And do you think that debate and questions are the same things?
I think Commissioner Sanchez accurately stated our present rule. That
I
we
wasn't
live by.
speaking of anything, I just was speaking generally, whether debate and asking a question are the same thing.
I think that when you or other speakers step to the podium, if we can address the issue in prompt fashion and quick with an answer, we usually do, or we look to staff. But there are times when we don't have a quick answer, or we just don't agree with you.
And do you actually think that that happens, that I ask a question and somebody tries to answer it most of the time?
This would constitute debate.
You can comment on our speaking rules at this time.
So my concern is that I don't think that they're being adhered to. I think we saw some semblance tonight that we don't even know what the rules are. When I asked for a copy of the rules from the township, I was originally, I actually asked to have them posted online, and that was denied, and that certainly should be something that people can reach easily, especially in an environment where those rules are breached so often. Okay, and so I would like to see them online, number one. I would like to see that every commissioner gets a copy of them and understands the difference between a question, asking a question and looking for an answer, and debate. Okay, debate is something completely different where you toss ideas back and forth to try and come to usually some agreement, okay? But that is completely different than asking a question and trying to understand something. So the time that we spent formulating those rules is useless if we don't follow them. So that's number one on my thing tonight. We also had some very...
Just to respond to that, unless you want to continue. As a public body, I believe we're only required to allow the citizens to come forward and voice their concerns, petition us for grievances that they have. There's no requirement for us to respond instantly to those grievances or those questions, or to necessarily agree with your generalized points ad infinitum.
Rara.
You actually did create regulations that said that something quite different, and that is that in the speaking rules, in the public comment rules, after hearing from the citizens, after them making their comments and saying they would like to have their questions answered, you agreed to do that, and you passed an ordinance. I don't know the number off the top of my head. You passed an ordinance or a resolution that allowed that would be the way forward in this township. So where you might not have had to do more than allow comment, Abington has agreed to allow more than comment. And that's why I'm asking you if you understand the speaking rules. So it really is an issue of them being constantly violated with people thinking, well, we don't have any rules. I'll make up the rules as I go. And my rules today are that all I have to do is allow comment. I don't have to allow that a question would be answered. And it was a matter...
Many times the chair in this seat has looked to either staff, to the police, to the fire, to Officer Freed for a quick answer to some things that you bring up. I don't know how you expect anyone to respond to a general gray allegation such as code is not doing their job. What are we supposed to say to that?
Well, that's good that you asked that, because then but that's good that you asked that. Can I just give you the answer, please, so that you know? You said you don't understand what it is I'm asking.
If you write me with code complaints, I'll certainly bring them to the attention of the code department.
Okay. And do we have a court case on Monday in Gadzicki's courtroom or not? Could you ask the solicitor, please?
I am not aware of anything.
We do not?
I'll discuss that with the board later. It's a litigation matter, so I'd be happy to discuss it later in executive session if you would like.
Okay. So my last comment is just that I'm concerned that we can't get court dates so that we can be there in court. Thank you.
Monetary.
Commissioners, if I could, just, there's been some discussion tonight about not following the speaking rules. I would just like to point out one of your speaking rules. Upon completion of comments, all speakers will be asked to be seated. At that time, the committee director, other commissioners, or other staff members may address the speaker's comments or questions. So that's actually the way it's supposed to happen. If a speaker has questions, they're supposed to ask them. Then they're supposed to sit down, and then the presiding officer can determine whether or not they're going to answer these questions. And our rules also do say state quite clearly that debate will be discontinued. So it's not really supposed to be a back and forth like we just saw there. So.
Can I just ask you, you just said that they may be answered, is that correct?
May be
The way it's
answered.
written?
May be
Thank you.
answered, right.
That they may be,
Right.
thank you.